Good afternoon, everyone. Does anyone remember the story of the three little pigs? Each pig was building a house to protect themselves from the wolf, and one built a straw house, and the second one built a stick house, and both of them got destroyed. The third one built a brick house, and that one stood up. And this is why we're going to talk about, resiliency. You need to build that brick house as well, because nowadays, let's think of ransomware as the wolf, and the ransomware is becoming very dangerous. That's why you need to have a brick house very, very strong. So I want to share with you a little bit about some statistics. At Veeam, every year we hire an independent research firm to see, what's going on with the cyber attacks, how they are evolving, and we just released this ransomware trends report, ransomware trends and practice strategy report last month at Veeam. And we asked companies how many of them, so we surveyed 1,300 organizations, how many of them were a victim of a ransomware attack in the past year. And 7 out of 10 said they were a victim of at least one attack, and probably they were victims of more. We've seen that it's not a matter of if or when, it's a matter now of how many times you're a victim of a ransomware attack. So this number is alarming, and you can see it doesn't matter the industry, it doesn't matter the size of the company. A lot of large enterprises with global footprint were also victim of ransomware attacks. So you need to be prepared. Now, another graph that I want to show you, we asked them what did they wish they had done differently prior to the attack. And I want to focus on the 5 on the top. So first, they said they wish they had improved their data recovery testing and procedures. And this is a powerful admission because many companies, they think they are prepared. They have backup, they have plans, but they have never tested them. So when the time comes, it's not full, the backup is not full, it might be compromised, and the recovery will fail. So this is the first one. Then they said employee security awareness training, very important. We'll talk more about this report during the panel. After that, they said more frequent backups, because backups are the livelihood of every company. If anything happens, this is your last line of defense. So that's very important. Then continuous threat detection. And finally, increase budget for security or backup solutions. Because a lot of them, they said, oh, we wish we had more budget for security, but resilience is that you need to have it throughout your company, throughout the whole organization, clear that all departments, they need to be resilient, they need to be working together to create something strong against these attacks. Now, with all those findings, and also we surveyed over 500 enterprise executives, Veeam co-developed with McKinsey and industry experts the first data resiliency maturity model, so DRMM for short, and it goes over 4 dimensions, so strategy, technology, people, and processes. And there are 4 stages of this maturity model that companies can be at that we saw, and 44% from those that we surveyed, those 500, they are in the basic level. So it's the bare minimum, and it's reactive and manual. So they have manual backups, and security is reactive. There is no clear strategy. They're pretty much in survival mode. Then 30% are in that intermediate phase. They are reliable. They already have a resiliency strategy, but they are slowly getting there. And as you can see, 74% are in those 2 stages. Then we have the third one, which is the advanced, only 18%, and they are mature, adaptive, they are following the 3-2-1-1-0 backup rule, they have resiliency more mature, and finally only 8% are in the top, the best in class, and this is where leaders set the bar. They have automation, they have monitoring, and AI is everywhere, helping out the whole organization. but this is important to understand. And this is a roadmap. So usually we just launched this as well at Veeam. And then you fill out a survey and you can see where your organization fits among these 4 levels and what you can do to improve your resiliency posture. Now I'm going to pass it to Brian, that is going to talk a little bit more about Otava and data protection.
Thanks, Julia. I don't want to spend too much time. I want to get into the panel discussion because I think it'll be a lot more entertaining. But just a little bit about Otava. We've been working with Veeam for over a decade. And so we're one of their top 5 service provider partners in the US. And I really feel like things are changing a lot in this category. So data protection, Julia mentioned the 3-2-1 strategy. We're all pretty familiar with it. But we think it's changing. The threat vectors are so dynamic now, and you have to kind of do it in real time to detect the bad actors who are trying to infiltrate your network. And so things that Veeam's been doing with anomaly detection, real-time detection, are hugely important. And you as IT professionals are probably having a big challenge with doing this because it's really eyes on screens almost 24/7. So Otava steps in and provides a managed service around that. So we take that operational overhead off the IT organization. We provide that service for you. So back to what is data protection in today's world. So the 3-2-1 was, hey, you have you make a copy of data on-prem or on the system. You have one on another system, and you have one off-site. That's no longer good enough. You have to start thinking about immutability. You have to think about more rigid data protection strategies, even air gapping that storage asset off so people can't get to it in any way, shape, or form unless they're doing the backup job. So I think that's changing. The way we're thinking about this is changing. The constant malware scanning that you have to do, you have to be on top of this 24/7. And we know that, to Julia's point, customers are experiencing multiple attacks every year. And we know that the bad actors are getting into the network and spending 100-200 days really understanding how the IT operations are happening, and they're building their attack plan. So it's happening every day, and you have to just be a lot more vigilant in how you're doing data protection in 2025. In terms of how are Otava and Scale working together? Craig and I met about a year, well, actually it was last year at this event. And we started talking, he knew we were a big Veeam partner, and I was talking to him a little bit about Scale and what customers were looking for. And I said, well, let's maybe work together and find a way for Veeam to support the Scale computing platform. And so this is the culmination of a lot of work, and we're really excited to be partnering with Scale. So let's get into the panel discussion. I'll leave this up for a moment so you can scan the QR code and get some more information about Scale, and then I'll roll that QR code to the Veeam environment.
Let me first of all say thank you very much for joining me. I said for the last year, Brian and I have spent a lot of time talking about these topics, so they are very near and dear, I think, to all of us, because almost everyone here has probably witnessed someone, hopefully not you, that has been hit with ransomware. I mean, 7 out of 10. Julie, let's start there. I mean, that was one of the stats that I think jumped out to me. 69% of people had experienced an attack in the last year. What do you think is driving the exposure?
Yeah, so this number is really eye-opening. It says 1 or more, so we don't know how many, because we see companies get hit over and over because they get hit and then they don't protect themselves, and the same ransomware group attacks them again. And what I think is just, these attacks are becoming so sophisticated. With AI now, we're seeing malicious AI models, and they're using malicious AI models for social engineering and for phishing emails. The phishing emails are becoming very personal. So recently we saw the story of they compromised a school because they were targeting the son of a CEO. So they got access to the school system, and then they were able to send an email to the CEO as if they were part of the school to get access to the CEO's credentials, etc. So it's really becoming, very personalized. That's why it's so important training as well. We saw on the report. But yeah, sophistication. It's hard for us to keep up with the level of sophistication that they have.
I hadn't heard that one. That's incredibly sophisticated and a little scary. Make sure that Jeff Reedy knows that if you can. Brian, let's turn to you. I mean, the Otava, as you mentioned, focuses a lot on backup services, edge computing. What do you see as the weaknesses in the clients that you're onboarding?
I think it's really the challenges around the breadth of the attack surface and what customers are having to deal with. So you're talking about everything from the backup jobs. Those are obviously the main target because they want to lock that data. But you also have a very distributed security posture that you have to deal with. And so that's not only the firewalls, the endpoints, the backup jobs, et cetera. It's also some of the social engineering. And so DRMM is a great approach, and one of the things that we do with our clients is we have a secure score, right? So we're able to visually represent that entire security posture and start to rate it, right? So green, yellow, red, and it helps the IT organization take that information to the C-suite or to the board and give them like a score to explain to them, not in technical terms, but really what's going on with the infrastructure and how do they need to think about it, invest in it, and improve that posture.
Yeah, it sounds like a really impressive tool. I've spent some time looking through the reports of that as well, and I want to spend some time on DRMM. But before I do, one of the other things I think jumped out in the data to me as I was looking through in preparation for this, and it was really around the fact that Veeam not only asks, what happened in the attack, but what do you wish you would have done ahead of the attack? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think the first one that we saw is about testing. So preparation. Companies, they think they are secure, they think they are safe, but they haven't prepared well. And then when the attack happens, it's chaos in the company. We don't know who to call and who is gonna take care of what. So it's really important to do those simulations, ransomware simulations, and companies, they don't do that. So I think that was the first one. The second one, training, because at the end of the day, we have these malicious actors that are trying to get into your system, but there are a lot of accidental things happening inside your company. So you need to train your personnel IT team, and not only in the IT department, outside, because the case I mentioned, the CEO, he was able to spot the phishing email because he was trained. At Veeam, we have to train every few months, the cybersecurity training. Everyone is aware of everything. So this is also important. We often forget about the people. We think a lot about technology, but people are important, and that's why it's one of the dimensions of the DRMM.
Yeah, it's a great point. In terms of how do companies operate, how did they operate 5 years ago? How do they operate today when they're being attacked? It's no longer just go get the last restore point and bring the data back. You have to, a lot of these things are real time, as I mentioned, and so the real time detection, isolation, having a sandbox environment, interrogating the data, looking for the malware, those IT operations, people and processes have to mature and change. Leveraging, obviously Veeam technology, but also the internal tools that you have in the business today. So I think it's that, as well as the testing from a testing perspective. We provide a lot of managed disaster recovery services, and it's always shocking to me how few recovery tests that they do in an annual year. So the run books have to change. We talked, if you were listening to Jeff this morning, he's talking about how many applications are moving out to the edge, right? And so those recoveries are going to be different. And so you have to continuously test those, update run books, address the people and process inside of the business, and just modernize kind of how you're running the organization.
Yeah, that showed up in the data. 33% said more recovery testing, one-sided thing.
Yeah.
Brian, real quick though, Julia shared a great example, I think, of the CEO. I think sometimes it helps hit home to the audience if you can give real world examples. Do you have any real world examples from clients or customers?
Yeah,
dealt with?
we've had
Plenty.
we have a lot. But I think from a disaster recovery perspective, we found that there were customers who were not doing these tests. They modernized a lot of workloads. They were looking at distributed workloads across public cloud, in the data center, out to the edge, and they needed to look at things like Entra ID, multi-factor authentication, IAM, making sure that they had the same practices across that fabric. So it was no longer just kind of implement one thing in one place. And so when they didn't have that in place, they had a huge number of vulnerabilities out in different parts of their infrastructure. So I think good lessons learned along the way. I think that also it has to, the people process and building up compliance and other muscle memory in the business, so that this is not just the IT organization any longer, right? And so you have to build, I think one of the big changes in IT over the past 5 years is you have to have constituents and business partners throughout the organization, because they have to help you understand what the business requirements are so that you can implement the appropriate IT operations processes.
Well, let's go back to the data resilience maturity model. I think it's a useful tool for assessing kind of where you are right now, but it's also something, as we talked about before, which you can kind of use to up-level. What do you see clients, customers doing up-level their
Yeah,
self-on
so
maturity?
it's a very helpful tool. They're using it as a roadmap to improve their data resiliency posture. And it's like a house. I love using analogies, but you start with the foundation, and then you put the walls and the door and the roof, and then you add up, lighting, etc. And from a house, it becomes a fortress, and that's the goal. Slowly you build up. You start adding things, because also you're not gonna add everything at once. It's going to be overwhelming for your team. You don't have the budget for that. So you do that slowly, and the DRMM helps you see what is more important for you, which areas. So first you fill out the survey, and then you really have, someone helping you and guiding you what is important, what should you start with, and it's really a roadmap. So hopefully everyone gets to the green bar, the best in class, and that's when you're resilient and you're protected against any attack.
Yeah. And based on the data you showed, it looked like majority of people are in the lower end. Brian, you've got a lot of experience with your clients through Otava. What do you typically see customers coming in? Is it really at that 70% that we're in the lowest end, or where do you see them?
Yeah, I feel like back to preparation and what they're trying to do in terms of building out that security posture. They're investing a lot in that IT infrastructure, but I think there's also the planning and preparation, but also a great acquisition you guys did recently was Coveware,
Yeah.
right? So when it does happen, there's the DR aspect of it with the actual infrastructure. But now if your data's locked and you're in a negotiation with one of these threat actors, and you're in a position where you have to negotiate the crypto payment, you have to work all that out. Veeam's done a great job of dealing with the I'll just call it post-mortem of an event, and how do you get back in terms of operations. But we also see, you never want to get there, because we also see when you have that situation, right, there's there's small, relatively small percentages of customers who get all their data back, and it's they get the keys and it's unlocked. A lot of them will make the payment and they still don't get the data back, and it's a pretty sophisticated a group of bad actors out there who are you think it's just some guy in the basement, right? With the lights off, on his keyboard. They're actually companies.
Yeah, they're running businesses out of this.
Yeah, they're actually companies, and You know, I think we heard some stories at Veeam where the negotiator actually is like a hired gun and works across multiple companies as negotiating. So like they start to like become aware of who these individuals are. So you really have to think about this from, you know, building the security posture. What are your internal recovery processes? And then in the event that you're going to have the data encrypted or mass lock or whatever it is, you're going to be dealing with one of these entities, and you're going to have to, have some planning around that. And I think where we're seeing the executives and the boards getting more sophisticated is it used to be like you'd go and say, well, we need to spend this much money on security, and it'd be like, oh, does it fit in the budget, et cetera. Now there are literally companies that are budgeting these ransom payments. Because it's going to happen. Like it's no longer, like you said, it's not just one attack a year. We're seeing companies that get attacked 4 times a year. So
like once you recover, how do you guarantee it's not going to happen again?
Yeah.
Difficult. Well, I mean, I think we spent a good amount of time on DRM, but one more question, which is basically, there's a lot to it. It's probably the most robust security model I've seen on the topic. I'm curious. Based on that, is there anything in there that you think is just consistently underestimated?
I think the training part, but also the 3-2-1-1-0 rule. So we often forget about the 1-0. We know the 3-2-1, but at Veeam we always add the 1-0. So you need 3 different copies of your data in 2 different medias. One of them being offsite, one of them being offline, air-gapped, or immutable. So the immutability part, now that ransomware is so common and happening everywhere, you need to have immutable data, so in an immutable storage, and that can't be encrypted, altered, modified. And then the 0 is the testing that we were talking about. So you need to be testing frequently. Hopefully it's automated, so you don't have to manage it. And with detection tools to see if there is anything wrong in your backups. And Veeam helps with all of that. He was mentioning a little bit about our tools. Now we have AI capabilities as well, looking at your backups, the recon scanner that looks at your backup servers and see if there are any anomalies. So yeah, we're trying to bring and help companies strengthen their security posture.
As I look out here, there's a lot of partners, MSPs in the market, are in the room with us here, and I think it's easy to think about this problem through the scope of a single company. How do you provide a service around that? What does that look like for helping clients become more resilient rather than being a backup partner to a customer?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because you can get into like when you're engaging with prospects and customers and you're talking about security as a general category, one of the things you need to be careful of is don't show up and throw up, because like there's so much, and if you just start talking about everything, the eyes roll back and then you lose them, right? So the DRMM approach is a great way to kind of get where the high vulnerabilities are and start to build your credibility and start to focus on those areas. And then over time, you can become more inclusive of all the different things that customer should be doing. So that's really one of our approaches in terms of talking to customers. Don't overwhelm them. Find out where the most strategic and important areas are to focus on, resolve those issues, and build up the trust over time. And then I think you can have some of these conversations about, oh, how do you do backups today? And read once, or write and never read. From an immutability perspective, is some things that people don't do. They're not really understanding. Again, they've been doing it for 10 years and they haven't changed the operations on how they're doing those backups. And I think Veeam's done an incredible job over the past 5 years in terms of modernizing kind of the real-time detection, whether it's streaming data or whether it's batch files, interrogating that data, and being able to help those customers really identify when they're having a problem and making sure if you're the service provider or an MSP in terms of that, from that perspective, that you're giving them that information, in real time, and you're, as an MSP, you're really in the role of thwarting that attack as it's happening, and then making sure you're doing kind of some analysis on the backside to triage and make sure that you're closing any of those gaps. So I think, there's that constant feedback loop that you have with the customer and helping them continuously get better with their posture.
If I may add as well, would be helpful to become more familiar with the DRMM and become advisors to your clients and tell them, hey, let's go through this data resiliency maturity model. Let's see where you fit in, and let me explain what you can do, and also explain how they're going to, what are they going to get out of it. So they're going to lower costs, they're going to get faster recoveries, they're going to protect their brand, their reputation, because we know when they're hit by ransomware attacks, a lot of them even close, a lot of businesses have to close. So show them the value that they will get by improving, because a lot of times they think, oh, it's going to be more work, more money, but there is a lot of value if they start going from one of those stages to the next one.
Great answer. Well, let's finish on this. This will be kind of a quick question I'll ask for both of you, which is, if you could make one change for a made-up organization that is our audience here, what would it be to make them more?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, maybe it's not as quick as I thought.
I think going back to the things I said, but probably the training part. So focus on your people as well, not only on your technology. People, this is the part that we often overlook, but spend some time, prepping them, and it should be across all the departments throughout the whole company. Train them, and it should be a culture in your organization to talk about cybersecurity and the awareness on cybersecurity. So yeah, that would be my one thing.
That was going to be mine.
There are plenty of others.
Double down on it.
I think it's, obviously there's all the best practices that we're talking about in terms of data protection and how to do that. And what we try to do with our clients is help them improve executive awareness, right? So one of the things that the teams have to get good at is talking to the business and making sure that they understand that really, we're, as an MSP, we're our customer's trusted advisor. The internal employees have to help be the trusted advisor of the executive staff, and they have to effectively train them up over a period of time so they understand they understand these components, the importance of what we're trying to do relative to protecting data, and they're open to, or they're thinking about it in different ways, so they're not resistant to it, because I think there's historical resistance, and I think that's going down market too, because we used to see these attacks happen at very large organizations because they could extract more money, right? And those organizations have matured over the recent future, and they're harder to get into. So we're seeing these threat actors kind of go down market. And so if you're an MSP and you're in the SMB space, you have a lot. Your prospects and customers are much more vulnerable than they were in past years. So it's helped get their muscle memory up in terms of how they're kind of thinking about security and how they're communicating to their leadership teams.
Awesome. Well, let me first thank you both for joining me up here. Great, unique perspectives. Thank you all for joining us. I think it's fair to say that ransomware is relentless. And based on that, I think there's a lot of maturity that is needed in the market, both for end users as well as MSPs that are serving those end users. Just any questions we can answer, definitely come up to us after this. Also, please do check out the Veeam Data Resilience Maturity Model, as well as the other data that's presented up here. Thank you all for joining.